So I was given this drawing of a ballroom for a flooring option, and I'd like to bring it into SketchUp to get a sense of scale here. There were no dimensions on here, but there are a few clues. These, I presume, are door openings. And I would also presume that they are probably about 6 feet wide. Looking at the thickness of these walls, that could be about the right size. So with this in mind, I also wanted to look at what these possible bump outs could be. And I really think they're like niches in the wall. Went online and did some Google searches for ballroom design. Came up with some of these images. So you can see all these ballrooms are quite tall. Ceiling heights of maybe 12, 14, 16, something along that nature. And you can see that the bump outs would be this the way the walls bump in and out. I can almost imagine something like this kind of a space where you have some very deep wall areas and some decoration on the side. So you can see again that we're talking a good height here. So I'm going to take this image to SketchUp. And again, my guess is that maybe this is the doorway to another hall. This could be a doorway into the service area. This could be something in the room, some sort of piers or something like that. This could be a center wall, no windows at all. It could also maybe open up. Maybe it's a glass wall. We don't know about this edge right here very well. This part here, I would say, are like niches in the wall, some sort of bumping in and out. This could be an elevator. This could be maybe an entrance to the other part of the hall. We don't know exactly, but we can assume that. So opening up SketchUp, there are several ways to begin this project. One, you can do File, Import, and then go to the folder that has the image. Make sure it says All Image Files. And this first one, we're just going to bring it in as an image. Click, move outwards and click. And that will get us the image into the SketchUp program. Because we brought it in as an image, it's like a one element. I'm going to right click over it and explode it. And while it's still selected, I'm going to right click over it and make it a component. I'm going to call it Plan. And I'm going to make sure that this is checked off down at the bottom. The reason I'll make a component is so that this does not interfere with anything else I bring in. So it's a separate element and I can select it separately. I'm going to double click inside. And so now I'm inside the component. And I'm going to draw a line to the best of my ability, a line along here where I think the doorway begins and ends. Notice as I come up closer to it, the line gets fuzzy. So it is going to be an approximate, but it'll be close enough for the work I need to do. Use the line tool. I'll select a point here, click, and I'll stay in the red. I want to make sure I'm in the red. Click. And so I'm saying that that is this here is the line. So I'm going to take the tape measure tool, and I'll click on this endpoint, click to this endpoint, click of the line I drew. It says it's 1 foot 9 7/8. I'm going to just type in 6 foot. And now I can't get into that length box, but I just type 6 foot. Notice it changes down at the length box. When I press enter, it's going to ask me if I want to resize the active group. Say yes. And then I'm going to zoom extents. Notice that the drawing got larger, but the person did not. The reason being is that this is a separate component, and so it's only affecting this component. After the object is to scale, I always like to use the tape measure tool and just verify that indeed this is 6 foot long, and sure enough, it is. At this point, I'm going to delete this line because it could become a problem later on. So just select it somehow and hit the delete button. We don't need to worry about the measurement. We figured it out. It's 6 foot. We can now start building up on top of this image. Another way to bring in your main image is to create a rectangle that's 6 foot by 6 foot. And reverse faces, right click, reverse faces. And we will bring in our image to this rectangle. File, import. Again, go find the image. Make sure this says all supported image types. And we're going to import it as a texture. Click, click. And so now this image is imprinted here. Since this is 6 foot wide, all I need to do now is select one of these doorways and make sure that the width of that doorway matches here. So I'm going to right click, texture, position. So if yours all look like this, just right click, fix pins. So if these are all white, when you right click and texture position, just right click on them and say fix pins and you'll get the color. Positioning images in SketchUp is used either in fixed pin mode or unfixed pin or free mode. In fixed pin mode, each pin is associated with a specific task. The red is used for moving, the green for scaling and rotating, the blue pin for vertical scaling or shearing, and the yellow pin for distortions. In unfixed pin or free mode, the pins are all acting freely and are represented with the same color. They do not have any specific task assigned to them. Since we want to keep this scaled up evenly, we'll use fixed pin mode and work with the red and the green pins, positioning them first on the image and then aligning them with our SketchUp model. I'm going to click to pick up, zoom up on the image, and click to where I think the 6 foot line is. I'm going to say like right there. Click the green. Same thing. I'm going to kind of eyeball as best I can. Ideally, I want to see a blue line between the two. So that means that they are parallel to each other, and that's what I want. I'm going to click and drag the red to this corner, click and drag the green to this corner. So now we're saying that this doorway is 6 foot wide, these lines are 6 foot apart, and I can then right-click, say Done. The next step is to select the edges of this and use the Move tool and move it until I get the edge of the image. So I'm selecting each line using the Move tool and bring it out until I get the edge of the image. And then I'm going to move this out of the way too. And I would once again select it all, right click and make component. Now that I got the plan to scale, I'm going to use the tape measure tool to give myself some guidelines to go by. So I'm going to select this edge here, click, and go across until I think I get to the spot where I think the walls are going to be. Click. I'm going to continue doing that on the ballroom here. Click. So that gives me the basic ballroom shape, and I know everything lines up well. And then I'm going to just do these little small lines here. I'm just going to kind of take a look. It looks like it's about 6 inches, so I'm going to type in 6. And it looks like this will be the same thing. So I'm basically regularizing the plan a little bit. So you can see I'm getting this plan kind of regularized. This line I'm going to go out in this direction, and it looks to me like it's maybe 3'6" or so, 3'4". 3'6" I made that. And so you can see I'm getting it. I want to be able just to draw a line and just kind of snap to all the points I need to snap to without thinking about the dimensions. And it's not going to be, these dimensions aren't going to be too odd. Again, we're working on a thick line here. I mean, if you zoom up, it's very fuzzy where the line is. And so you know, you can play around with that dimension a little bit. Looks like this might be maybe 7'10". 2'9". So I draw the tape measure line and get it close, and then I think about the size of the piece and think about what it would be like. And since this looks like it's symmetrical, I made this 6'8" and then 1'8". I'm going to do the same thing over here from this bump out. 6'8", and I made this 1'8". So whatever I did on this side, I'm mirroring over here. So once I got all these pieces in place, and I know those kind of crazy, I'm just going to start using the line tool, and I should be able to snap to point to point to point pretty quickly. I can see that these don't line up. This one and this one don't line up a little bit. Looks like it's off by 4 inches on this side, and a little bit more on that side. I'm not sure if that's truly what it needs to be or not. So we'll just we're going to say that that this is what it is, that they don't really line up, and go from there. Using the line tool, I'll start here, and I'm going to work my way around the space. I should be able to snap to things relatively easily. So I don't have to think about it. So I'm making sure I stay in the red and the green just in case. Definitely don't want to go in the blue. We're not going up in the Z-axis yet. You can see how quickly this thing is kind of scaling out to be. On this end, I didn't do lines for here, so I'm just going to go straight up and close the shape out. So now that shape is separate. Let me take a look at these areas here. I might just use a rectangle tool and just eyeball this bump in, and then I'll add this little bump in too. That could have been another way of doing this project. I could have made the basic shape and then add rectangles to delete or add. So here I'm going to delete this line, and here I'm going to delete this line. So if I click on the surface, I've got all of these done. That whole perimeter is good, and it matches pretty closely the plan below. Remember, we've got some thickness here, right? We've got some thickness to these lines. Let's go to Edit, Delete Guides, and repeat the process again with the perimeter on the outside. In other words, this hallway. It's the same idea. We're just going to start and create tape measure lines all the way around. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then get back to you on this. So for these shapes here, what we want to do is perhaps bring the wall up. Well, would be really handy is to bring these two walls up together. If I draw a line connecting here to here, and another line connecting here to here, now that I've got the lines drawn here, I can start push-pulling this up. If I do a straight push-pull up and type in, let's say, the height of 14 feet, what happens is it actually carved out a hole at the bottom. That's not quite what we want. We could do that and then draw a line back in to get the bottom. I prefer maybe we could use the Control key and push-pull and go up 14 feet. We can do the same for the walls, go up 14 feet. And then for the ceiling of the hallway, that could also be 14 feet, or it could be just 12 feet. Sometimes those hallways are a little shorter, so that you can do duck runs and things like that for the services here. We're going to want to get inside these spaces. So I'm going to select the ceilings of the spaces. Right-click, Make Component. And then go ahead and make a layer for the ceiling. Add a layer. Name it Ceiling. And then I would either do right-click Entity Info, and put that entity on the ceiling layer. Or I can select it and then put the ceiling here and then click away, and it's on a ceiling layer. If I take the ceiling layer and make it not visible, you can see we can look inside. Just to check and see if we are all in the correct axis, I'm going to click on the Styles button, click on the Home button here. This is the one that's being used, and go to Edit. And instead of color all the same, select color by axis. We should only be seeing red, blue, and green lines here. Looks pretty good, so we can continue with our doorway openings and setting things up. I'm going to tape measure line here. So I'm going to tape measure from here to the midpoint of the back. I'm going to hit the right arrow key so it stays locked in the red. And go ahead and then go on. Then let's do 36 on this side, 36 on this side. This will give us the width of a 6-foot door. And then we're going to go up, I think maybe 8 foot in the blue. Because it's a larger room, it probably has a larger door. It might even have an archway on top or a large transom or a nice panel design. Do a rectangle to break that surface. So now we've got a rectangle. And then I'll use the Move tool with the Control key. And I'm going to go ahead and go from the midpoint of this back area, click, to the midpoint here. Click. This door, I would do a separate one. This will be to the midpoint. I'll make sure it's in the green axis. So I'll click the left arrow key. I'll make sure it's in the green axis. And I'm going to go ahead and go make sure I have 8 foot height here. Go ahead and push pull this then. Push pull through. Double click here. Double click here. And we can just go ahead and erase these lines down at the bottom. And now we're seeing now, with the lines we're seeing in this image is the lines of the original layout. May want to put lines back in if necessary for the design. These walls are different colors because they're actually having the image from the layout on them. So we can take that off now. We don't have to have these with the projected layout on them. So I'm going to go to my materials, select the Home button, and here is that layout that we brought in at the beginning. I'm going to select it, right click, delete. And now I can see front and back faces better, and I would go and select all these surfaces that I need to and reverse faces. Right click, reverse faces, right click, orient faces. That should orient all those surfaces properly. This perimeter we don't need anymore, so just delete that. This is looking pretty good. I noticed that there's this line here because of this little wall segment. I'm just going to go ahead and push pull this out all the way. Therefore we don't have a separate line in here. And it looks okay in the hallway as well. Not necessarily to do, but it does clean up that wall surface a little bit. Go to Edit, to the line work, and instead of color by axis, I can switch back to all same. And I can continue working on this model.